Multiplayer games are a complicated beast. It can take you from the lowest of lows.
The only thing I'm not great with it is
You dare say the flip.
No.
Full cats!
Alright, monkey. Don't do this next time.
To the highest of highs.
Rotate off the relative critical. Good job. Okay, I'm gonna rotate now. God damn, Alex.
I'm fucking insane.
Some of our best gaming memories can be found late night in a Discord call with green rings sparking up in conversations, callouts, and stupid jokes, all while playing a wonderful game. Well, at least they used to feel wonderful. Someone should probably look into. Let me paint you a picture. It's November 2012. The early reviews from ethically questionable YouTubers who have circumvented the official release date has done nothing except build up a monstrous wave of hype between you and your friends. You've spent weeks speculating, but the day has finally arrived. You've just finished dinner, and now you're sitting in the car with your dad on a cold November evening on the way to GameStop. You make your way to the counter, and after your father finishes exchanging IDs with that gatekeeping rat tending the counter, you now hold in your hands your very own copy of Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Little do you know, this CD is about to change the course of the rest of your life. This scenario was a reality for millions of children across the world. The release of Black Ops 2 completely warped the way that I enjoy video games. For the entirety of Black Ops 2's life cycle, I played every single day. It's the only Call of Duty I'd max out every weapon and prestige in. But more than that, it gave me the very first taste of the thrill of competition. The League Play feature was the start of an interesting relationship with multiplayer. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But that's to be expected, because in all relationships, there has to be. In all multiplayer games, we agree to play by the same power structure. It's the part of the game that we, the players, get to show how clever we are while working within the confines of the rules set out for us. In League of Legends, it's items and runes. In Civilization, it's your resource management. But in Black Ops 2, it was the Pick 10 system. It also set the bar of expectations for me on what a healthy multiplayer game should look like. Customizing your loadout isn't exactly a new concept, but up until this point, it was never this flexible. Want to check out your main gun and no sidearm? Sure. Want a riot shield, rocket launcher, and tomahawks? Why not? How about some shock sticks and a fuck ton of perks and a knife? Go nuts! As long as your loadout equaled 10, the world was your oyster. And it worked great. The player got to experiment and essentially turn their FPS experience into an RPG. It was perfect. You got to play the game exactly how you wanted, and it felt fair because the guy across from you had just as many options and opportunities that you had. That's what it's all about. That's what a good multiplayer experience is, which made it even more upsetting when I watched them fuck it up in the next game. Sometimes less is more, but that's just it. These companies don't ever know when to stop, and the biggest hurdle for most of the games is finding the perfect. The concept of doing too much is not criticized enough, and there's one game that's a perfect example of what not to do. Fun fact about me, I'm a massive League of Legends fan. I've been playing for a decade, so believe me when I say, I know exactly what an unbalanced piece of shit looks like. But for those of you who don't know because you don't play, League of Legends' biggest Achilles heel is that they're constantly adding way too much stuff way too quickly. They never seem to learn or think of the consequences before they do something. I'll give you a recent example. In an effort to create item diversity, they created a concept called Mythic Items. These items were meant to be the foundation for your entire build, but really limited your options because previously, any character could buy any item in the game. So this concept became really frustrating when there were two items that were both really good on a character. So now you're forced to choose between which one was more important to them. Or even worse, you'd have to play against a character that actually benefited from not building a mythic item first. And they kicked the shit out of you before you could even touch yours.
You saw it last game. Who the fuck needs a mythic? I can just one-shot anyone anyway.
This is not good game design. Unless it's legitimately breaking the game, you should not take tools out of the player's hands. The old system allowed you to have any kind of wacky build you wanted, and while it wasn't perfect, it didn't need an overhaul, just fine-tuning. How do I know that? Because they brought back the old system anyway. But again, that's the problem with these companies like Riot. They don't think 2 steps ahead. Yeah, we have the old system again. Yippee! But what was the point? All you did was make the game unplayable for 2 years. That's not an exaggeration, by the way. My friends and I literally stopped playing the game because mythic items made it so much less fun. Doubling down on bad ideas isn't the only problem. Multiplayer games have a massive scaling issue. In the eternal effort to push the boundaries and outdo themselves, games like Overwatch and League will continually release incredibly broken gear, abilities, and characters. The concept of power creep isn't explored enough, especially in hero-based games. If you're devoting thousands of hours into 1 or 2 characters, you're eventually going to realize that the new characters have tools in their arsenal that make your character obsolete. Why play Reinhardt when Mauga exists? Why play Jarvan when literally anyone else exists?
Dude, she does so much damage. What
the fuck?
No way. No way. No way! This game is so interesting!
It's not just League, by the way. There's plenty of other games that have this weird obsession with constantly flipping the board. I think companies are wildly out of touch with the player base. It's not healthy to constantly be playing whack-a-mole with overpowered characters and concepts. And the worst part is, under the surface, League is legitimately a fun game, but it's gotten so complicated now that whenever I try to introduce someone new, they're overwhelmed and they give up because they feel like they'll never be able to catch up with the rest of the player base. In the current state of the world, more than anything, people just want. On the other side of the coin, let's look at two multiplayer game franchises that have stood the test of time and ask ourselves, why? Super Smash Bros. Melee is one of the longest living fighting games in the world. It not only has a thriving community of 40-year-olds, but it continues to add new generations to carry on the legacy and love of the franchise. But how does a game from over 20 years ago stay relevant in today's landscape? Well, as we discussed in my last video, I believe one reason Melee has stood the test of time is because there's not a game like it in the modern era that feels even remotely the same. The characters are iconic, and some of gaming's most famous moments have come from this installment. It's a classic. However, on top of that, I think the biggest reason for its longevity is the fact that the game is so old that it can't undergo any development changes. Any shifts in the meta are completely on the player side of things. Jigglypuff, a character once thought to be garbage, shot to the top of relevancy thanks to Hungrybox, a player who perfected his craft with the character and became the best Melee player in the world at some point. But half the cast is useless, is commonly said about Melee. But the fact that every few years, a low tier rises up out of irrelevancy shows that this is simply not true. Even if the game isn't balanced in the traditional sense, the player base says fuck it. We'll figure it out. But the biggest factor to its longevity is the community. If you want to learn Melee, someone will teach you Melee. There's a stockpile of guides and YouTube content continually coming out. I couldn't tell you about any League YouTubers, because all the good ones fucking left. Plus, despite Nintendo's best efforts, the tournament scene is still alive. Melee players are truly in it for the love of the game. They're a good example of a player base that can benefit from a consistent game, but an ever-changing landscape brought on by the players. On the other side of the fence, we have Counter-Strike, a game even older than Melee, but the model example for how balancing an ongoing game should be handled. If you look at the side-by-side of Counter-Strike to CSGO to now, you'll notice that not a whole lot has changed. Mechanically, it's the same game. You point and click, but in the simplicity, you're able to make changes incrementally that improve the game's quality of life. CSGO is a well-balanced game, the very definition of a skill matchup. No one-way blinds, no teleporting, no win button. The game is so balanced that even the smallest additions, while are welcome, give cause for serious conversation. However, what really sets Counter-Strike apart is, unlike most games, Valve listens to the player base. When the revolver released in CSGO, it was broken as fuck. Every match looked like a western. But realizing this, it took Valve 2 days to nerf the gun. Just for perspective, we had Mythic Items for 2 years in League. In the case of Counter-Strike, if there's a lesson to be learned, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it is broke, do fix it quickly. Not everything needs to scale infinitely. Not everything needs to be overhauled. And it certainly doesn't need to happen constantly. Developers need to know when. The point I'm trying to make here is the players don't want to hate these games. Ultimately, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. These studios think that if they stop adding new stuff at this pace, people will stop playing, and it couldn't be further from the truth. We literally quit League because it wasn't worth the effort of learning a new meta every week. COD, while still popular, lost a fan in me and many others by constantly shaking everything up every single year between 3 studios, instead of sticking to just what worked and building off that. And all of this is achievable and totally possible, but publishers just need to give studios time to make a quality product and not rush it out, because overall, people just want a better game. All gamers are really looking for these days is something stable and consistently fun. Obviously, it won't last forever. All great things come to an end, but the difference is, it'll be on its own terms, and not from